NASA are not the only ones in the USA trying to send a spacecraft into space. There are plenty of unknown engineering brilliant minds attempting to, and failing, to make something break the walls of the atmosphere here. Well, at least there were free in my neighborhood several years ago. It was quiet, a small place with a low population. Almost about half the people in it were amazing at engineering, especially that things that had done all the spacecraft and rockets and all that. I had no idea what had been drawn in all these geniuses to this small town and why they were all wanted to launch their little test spaceships into the sky for a specific part of town. The small park, but when it happened, almost all the people there that lived went there to watch. It always failed. Everyone kept hush about it like it was a whole little space program we had going on here. So the government wouldn't investigate and find where it had forgotten the parts from or something. In late 2007, a group of four geniuses had gotten together to build something that would actually work and had a little twist to go along with it. I didn't know that what that twist was, but they spread a rumor of it to keep people interested. The four of the people were the brightest minds in town, and the rest of the engineers said that they were too unstable to work on something as big as this. So the engineers quit their high paying jobs, received some parts, and I'm sure totally legal way, and went to work. They had hidden away and built a thing over a year. But in January of 2009, when everyone had forgotten about the whole thing, they finally appeared, carrying a box size of a small cow, covered in a black sheet. The scientists looked very unclean, unshaved, and very skinny and pale as the snow on the ground. They looked like they hadn't slept or eaten in weeks. But I saw something else look out of fear in their eyes, like they were nervous about something. I figured it was just fretting over if their year-long project would fail and it would all go to waste. As they fought at the town park, as it was the spacecraft was launched, all of them took the back seat of the reveal of what looked like a random jumble of metal pieces, along with the round black orb on top of it, and tons of skinny landing legs. I wasn't so sure as if this thing taken off, let alone standing wherever it wanted to land. Someone in the large crowd asked of what the black orb on the top was. The presumed leader of the engineers replied in a quiet, raspy tone, as if he lost his voice or just hadn't talked in a long time. Microphone. He didn't look like he had the one asking the question, just off into the distance, like he was plotting the path the spacecraft would take. With monitoring device on his hands, he launched. Everyone cheered, but the scientists looked up at the sky with tears and red in their eyes, before looking at the device what seemed to be like 20 minutes. Then one of them said, at the same raspy whisper, that the craft had broken into the atmosphere and had gone into outer space. None of them smiled. The crowd cheered yet again, even louder and longer this time, as their small town had finally achieved something great. During this celebration, I was beginning to wonder why the engineers were so sad, angry, even spiteful. Maybe they were really tired or grown hate of their device after working it for a year. Either way, I was convinced that they were smarter and better than the people at NASA now. Just four people in a year, building such a yet functional spacecraft. This was truly amazing. It wasn't included in the news or published anywhere, but it was just a small town thing. I thought that maybe the satellites would detect a small ship, but it was far too small and probably would have been thought of just enough space debris. In 2011, the spacecraft did come back into town, landing almost exactly where it took off. In the park, everyone's amazement had came back in full force as three of the engineers went over to it. The fourth one had gotten his job back and had back to work today, happy and healthy again. After taking a break for over 2 years and to collect data, they inspected the ship to look like it had been what had broken, etc. Considering the whole thing on Mars and did come back, it was great shape. But it was when the scientist went over to the microphone and said that his data had gotten the paleness and scared look in their eyes. No one would have ever wanted to be the one to take out the audio recording in it and listen to it. Maybe we should wait for him to get back, one of them said, referring to the engineer at work. To speak of the devil, 10 seconds later, he came driving back in his car to check it out. Again, the engineer saw the microphone and instantly had a look of panic. It was time. It was about 2 weeks before the audio was revealed. It was just over 3 minutes long. Only one of the engineers went to talk about it when they heard, and how they had cropped the original 4-hour-long recording. Of what he said horrified me. The first scientist, the self-proclaimed leader of the group, had plugged his ears and screamed for only about 8 seconds into the playing. He was then crying and seemed to have been hallucinating. When he had heard it, he screamed for it to stop, and when it did, he left the building, and they were all in what seems to be missing, not picking up this phone for the last 2 weeks. Two of the other ones had lost bodily control, and the fourth engineer skipped halfway into the recording, involuntarily urinating, defecating, having seizures, having loss of the ability to breathe properly, and subsequently died, while the others are still alive, but has been sent to a mental asylum and had lost the ability to communicate. By this point, many of the crowd were crying and even scared due to the speakers next to him, ready to play the 3-minute cropped recording. Many had ran out of the crowd and into their home to plug their ears to hide. The scientist mumbled "cowards" under his breath. Then someone in the crowd asked a question they were all thinking. But how were you affected by it? The engineer smirked, clearly feeling perfectly fine, even happy despite the death, disappearance, and insanity of his peers. I would have expected to be pale and even happy despite death, and even scared and confident. He was grinning the entire time. It calmed me. I felt more pure now, ready to do anything. In fact, the crop part was my favorite. The part at the end makes me feel the best. People have very mixed reactions to it. Here, why don't I just turn on these speakers and... I didn't let him finish. I ran to the front of the crowd as he was talking, grabbed the speakers, and the audio player had the disc. I ran, and ran, without thinking, without going to my house, just running straight. I wasn't going to let this absolute maniac get to me. I ended up midway at the local woods, crying and screaming, not able to keep quiet. I took the CD out of the audio player and scrambled and kicked the rest to destroy it. I put the disc in my pocket and sneaked into my house. I am here almost 4 years later, listening to that disc, and I had completely forgot about it. When I got into my house, that fateful day, I played the CD, ready to die, go insane or anything, because I was so damn scared that nothing mattered to me anymore. Or the thing that didn't cause me to go crazy or kill myself, it just filled me with dread, and it filled me with paranoia, like I was being watched while listening to it. Now that I listen to it again, it fills me the same effect, getting worse and more as I focus on sounds of Mars. But if I'm distracted, it's not that bad. I can't let anyone else listen to this though. There is a way too much risk and such a horrible thing to happen. I don't know why these things happen due to listening, but I don't want to find out. The medical engineer was apparently killed by being trampled by a large crowd. Now the neighborhood has no engineers, much less astronomical engineers. Sure, the average income is down, and we don't get to watch a spacecraft take off every month. But at least things like this won't happen anytime soon.